Well, we're halfway through the plagues, and the plague that we're looking at tonight is the boils upon man and beast. Now, what's unique about this plague compared to all the other plagues that we've seen so far? We've seen the river turn to blood. We've seen the frogs come out. We've seen the lice. We've seen the flies. We've seen, I'm missing one. The blood, the frogs, the lice, the flies, and the livestock died. So what's different about this one than all five of those? They're all kind of personal, but this is personal in what way? Yeah, it affects them physically. They were just, witnesses of those. The blood just made life difficult. The frogs just made life difficult. The lice made life difficult. The flies made life difficult, and the cows made life difficult. But this one, it actually impacted them very personally. So we see boils upon man and beasts. Again, this is just separated from the Israelites. So Goshen is still protected, but the boils came on all man and all beast. Now there's several gods that we're going to look at tonight, two in particular, but this plague would attack a god, Imhotep, however you say it. He was a god of healing. This would attack Sekhmet. She was a goddess of healing, but those aren't the primary ones that we're going to look at today. But let's begin with how this plague starts. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Take handfuls of soot from the kiln and let Moses throw them in the air in the sight of Pharaoh. It shall become fine dust over all the land of Egypt, become boils, break down and sores on man and beast throughout all the land of Egypt." And one thing is different here is God doesn't go to Pharaoh and say, this is the plague that's going to come, tomorrow or whatever. He just goes and he does it. But I want us to look at this. Take handfuls of soot from the kiln. This word, Greek kibshan, is only found in the Bible 4 places. 2 of them are here in the 2 verses here that says, one, God tells Moses to go do it, and then Moses goes and does it. But then in 2 other places, it is found in Genesis chapter 12, 19, verse 28, translated furnace. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the valley, and he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. So this is, smoke just going up. And the other place it's found is in Exodus 19. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. So I don't know exactly what I want to take of this, but I think the Egyptians did not make furnaces or kilns for anything other than for large industrial works like smelting gold and silver, nickel and copper and all that, and then baking bricks. They didn't make any of these things for anything else besides that. And we know that the Egyptians did not sacrifice animals during this time. However, there's evidence that supports a practice that we're going to get into a little bit, that there was a few rare times where the Egyptians practiced sacrifice of people. Now, most don't think in terms of like South America, the Aztecs and the Mayans and things like that, where they just, through hundreds of people or thousands of people were sacrificed. These were very ritualistic kind of deals, and it really is surrounded the god Seth. Seth was seen as a red god, which in relation to the color was a very bad omen. In the midst of the chaos that was taking place throughout Egypt, the priests now endorsed the most evil practice, human sacrifices. Now, Seth was really interesting. He was a really important high-level god of the Egyptians. His nephew, his nephew was a god called Horus. He was often the ancient Egyptians' national tutelary deity. He was a good god, and he was depicted as a falcon-headed man wearing the Peshtian, also known as the red and the white crown, symbol of kingship over the entire kingdom of Egypt. So he represented the king, and Seth represented the desert part. And Seth became known as an evil king, but that was not, they didn't want to get rid of him, but they needed evil to balance things out. They don't have, like we have, Satan, who is evil in the ultimate sense, and he is going to be punished and eliminated. Seth was a god who was associated with Ra, and one of the big things that we know about Seth was that he, every night in their thinking, the sun died, and it had to go across through the realm of the unknown, and a giant snake would try to attack it every night rather. And so Seth was seen as the defender of Ra until he resurrected in the morning every day. Every night this thing's going on. But Seth and Horus were kind of locked in this. This is a picture of one of the deals there drawn, and it looks like they're working together, but they are working against each other. And there's a whole lot of stuff about Seth and Horus through this. But Horus has got the head of a falcon, and Seth has the head of an unknown beast. They think it was. They think that the Egyptians knew what it was, and they would go out and kill it, and it became extinct. We don't know. But the point is that this is a whole image, not of peace, but of conflict. An image that represents opposites. And sometimes you need a monster at your side to keep the other monsters at bay. In the Egyptian mind, what monster is attacking them? They had 5 plagues that just was devastating. And the reason they bring Seth is to combat these plagues. We need Seth. We don't want Seth. He is an outlier god, but we're going to recruit Seth to help us. That's kind of what the Egyptian priests and stuff were doing. And to harness his ability, his power, we're going to have to sacrifice some people. Now, it's very ritualistic. It wasn't just, we're going to kill a whole bunch of people. And it wasn't anything that they did often, but they did it on a few occasions when things got really bad. They're trying to bring order back to their lives. But the problem is anything big enough to deal with God? No, it's not going to work. So they took soot from the kiln and stood before Pharaoh. Now, we don't know exactly what kiln they got from, whether it was iron or smoke, iron or any of these metals, or whether it was from the brick factories that were doing that. But the priests would not go there. But it was understood that, we'll see, they got the soot from there. They bring it, Moses brings it to Pharaoh and throws it up in the air. Now that was pretty important, because the magicians and the priests began to throw, when they would sacrifice someone, they would take the ashes and they would throw it up in the air and spread it all over, and with the idea that this would protect us. So what Moses does, he basically ridicules their process here. He takes this and they're wondering, when he does it there, why in the world is he doing this? He throws it up in the air, and what happens? Boils. Instead of protection, they have boils. And so it really, because they believe that Seth could help them, and actually he doesn't. So he throws it up in the air, and it became boils breaking out in sores on man and beast. Moses, representing the God of the Hebrews in front of Pharaoh, and all the top officials began to mockingly intercede, if you will. Oh, let's just do this. Throw it up. And it was a disaster. These two primary gods of Egypt were not worshipped for 50 years or so after this. So the plague crossed all over Egypt. So the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils came upon the magicians, upon all the Egyptians. They couldn't. They can't stand. They got them on their feet. They got, this everywhere. It's a terrible plague that is it's just going to destroy them. They are in trouble. Now, what would you think Moses would do? The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not listen to them, as the Lord had spoken to Moses. Moses was told he's not going to listen. He's going to harden his heart. He is just all in on what he's doing here. Now, what are your thoughts on this?
So, I'd never noticed this before when you started talking about the kiln. If it was from the brick ovens, how delicious is that iron?
Yeah.
They wouldn't let them, they wouldn't give them the stuff to make the bricks, which is what got this whole thing kicked off to begin with. And now it's the very thing that they were punishing them with that causes all these boils to break out all over them. I mean, that's like Harry Potter worthy stuff.
Yeah. Oh, the guy that I wrote, he said that they went to the kiln that they were doing this. I don't know. I don't see Moses going and getting ashes of dead people, which very might likely have been Jews being sacrificed. I don't know. I don't know that he would have gone and got that, but that makes more sense to me. But yeah, it really throws them for a loop. They just can't get that in their heads. Yeah, it's kind of like Harry Potter.
Well, and the second image, kind of following that theme of them throwing up the dust, and I don't know, all my life I just imagined that being in the throne room, right? But the implication of this is that dust that they threw up in the air went everywhere, all throughout Egypt. And so what did that look like? I mean, it's like sandstorm type stuff. I mean, just it would have been evident as soon as it touched them, boils.
Yeah, I don't know whether that was symbolic or that went everywhere and that's what caused it. But Moses throws it up in the air, and then they all come down with boils. And I read a little bit. They don't know what the boils were. Some think, well, it was kind of a leprosy. It was this and that, but it was boils. It was painful. It was to the point they couldn't stand up. And every Egyptian and whatever animals were left from the last plague, and I think they went and took them from the Israelites. All of those animals had boils. Now it didn't kill them, but it would have been miserable. Anything else?
I think it's interesting when you say Moses could do this, but God's also telling him he's not going to change his mind. So you see, then what's the point of it? Well, I think it's building the story to the people of Egypt. Because Pharaoh's going to be Pharaoh no matter what, but letting them know who they're really all going to be dealing with. Yeah. And so even if it doesn't impact Pharaoh immediately, it puts the rest of them in a position to understand what situation they're in and who's in charge.
There comes a plague where the Egyptians have a choice whether when the hailstorm comes, whether they're going to leave them out or bring their people in. But I think that's true. He's still judging the people of Israel, of Egypt, but he's also helping the people of Israel develop faith, because they don't really have a whole lot of faith. And this is the sixth plague in about 6 months' time, and that's not a lot of time really for the people of Israel to start having a clear image of God. And that's what he's trying to build faith in us, as well as destroy them, and maybe build faith in them. Some of the Egyptians go with them, not many, but some, and some of the other people go with them. But it is God trying to build faith in his people in this, right?
So is there any backstory to why a boil for the Egyptians,
No.
other than the obvious standpoint?
Yeah, I couldn't find anything that would say that. I don't know. Same with darkness. I don't know the specific thing God had in mind, other than in the next ones he attacks, the air space with darkness and hail. Thank you, hail. I couldn't think of it, but I don't know.
Did the Egyptians call on Seth to help them go through?
No, by the time this is done, they're kind of done with, every god that this deals with, they begin to lose faith in them. He's trying to destroy their faith in them. He is not really.
The Seth that it's described, he's the god of chaos.
Yeah.
He's the god of wind and storms and all of that. So they're throwing all this stuff in the air. He didn't end up assisting him with that,
Yeah.
just the distribution across that whole part of the world.
Yeah, it doesn't really help.
I got a couple of things. Kind of think about what was Pharaoh doing? He probably was consulting with his priests about what do we do to stop this? And he sent the charge out to, you know what? They told him, let's call Seth. We hate to do it, but let's do it. And so they're out there throwing their ashes and doing their thing, and here comes Moses with a mop and the action, right?
Yep.
And I also can kind of appreciate Moses didn't know the why on this much. He just obeyed.
Yeah. Well, we assume, we're not told. We got a few verses in this that tells about it. Moses may have known a whole lot more. Maybe God told him, but he didn't write it down. He just does it. But that's just, we'll have to ask Moses, how much did you know when you're doing all this?
Yeah.
But he just does what God says, and he's pretty solid with it.
And then those boils, they were basically disabled. They couldn't stand.
Yeah. Now, I don't think that would have been for anybody, even Pharaoh. He's, just like in all of the plagues, they stop doing everything. And they are, whatever they were doing before, they're not doing it anymore. If whatever they were thinking, trying to sacrifice people to help Seth have an attack against Moses, it falls flat, and so they're done.
It takes some time to get over the boil.
Yeah, even when it's okay, the bulls are stopped. They got to heal. It's not a miraculous healing.
Right.
John, did they just give up on their gods and goddesses? Because there's the Isis, goddess of healing, and Sekhmet, goddess with power over healing. And then there's Sunu, who protects them from pestilence.
Yeah, they do eventually get rid of the Pharaoh that follows this. So the Pharaoh, he's killed in the Red Sea. His son, his firstborn son, dies at the 10th plague. His other son becomes Pharaoh, And during his lifetime, that's when Egypt serves one God. And that's the only time that Egypt served one God. Now, it wasn't, it wasn't exactly the way the Israelites did it. He was trying to, figure it out. But for one generation, they served one God. And then, he dies, and another Pharaoh says, "Oh, we're going to get back," and they introduce all the gods again. Yeah, it's a mess. Anything else? Okay, so what is the action of this? The plague of boils. Moses and Aaron scatter ashes from a furnace to mock the spells of the priesthood. That's what he does. The aspects of faith removed, God Seth and the god Horus, primarily, these other gods as well. And they're really, Moses is really deteriorating the faith of all of the gods of Egypt. The aspect of doctrine removed, the belief and practices regarding sacrifice of the four religious centers was complete. The four religious centers are really the center of the attack on this, but it's over the whole country, and they're done. The belief system around protection from plagues was nullified. They had a belief that we're going to get Seth, he's going to stop all these plagues from happening, and it doesn't work. And then the purpose is to change the behavior of people regarding the practice of sacrifice. Remember, the Egyptians did not sacrifice animals, which is one of the reasons why Moses said, we've got to go out, us, our wives, our children, all of our animals, and we don't know what God's going to call us to do yet. And from the last plague, he said, if we stay in town, if we stay local and sacrifice, the Egyptians will kill us. So he's showing the people about the practice of sacrifice and show that there's no power that can stand against the plagues of God. Nobody can stand against what God is doing in these plagues. And so they're the Egyptians. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking we're going through 6 plagues, and I'm thinking 2 of them would have been sufficient. I think I would have gotten it after 2. I think. But if I'm just like them, I would have been the same way. But it's like, man, these things are devastating to the people.
I'm thinking if I was an Egyptian, I would think this Jehovah God is Seth squared. He's a bad guy that's made everything worse than it was before. Or I would say, ooh,
Yeah.
something else.
And I'm sure some people were starting to think maybe this God is the one God. And others were saying, this is the worst God. He is and that's where Pharaoh was. And I think, the majority of Egypt was probably like that. And when you think of it, bring something up, you think about how easy is it to change a person's belief and their views of their God. It's hard.
Maybe 400 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just think about today. You talk to anybody who believes in another God. You talk to a Mormon. You talk to people from India, or anybody who has. Talk to a typical American who doesn't believe in God. It's hard to change someone's mind about their God.
And didn't it say that God was hardening the Pharaoh's heart?
Yeah,
He
it-
was continuing to harden his heart. So, I mean, they were going to keep on with these plagues.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to think about that, because it says, Pharaoh hardened his heart, Moses hardened Pharaoh's heart, and God hardened his heart. One view, and I don't know how common it is, but it's definitely out there, is that God intentionally, actively, without Pharaoh's will, hardened his heart. That may be true. I don't see it that way. I think it is an expression that Pharaoh, like clay and butter, the sun beats on it, one hardens because of its nature and one melts because of its nature. Pharaoh's heart was according to his nature. this is what I think, that, and God hardened it by doing these things, but it was still Pharaoh's will that hardened his heart. So you can take it any way you want. I don't know that really there's, I don't see that there's anything that says God could not harden his heart like the first thing, that Pharaoh would have loved to have repented, but God says, no, you're going to he's hardened his heart. I just don't see that. But, so there's two ways of looking at that.
John, of course, right in the beginning, when he talked to Moses, he said, you know, I want you to go. And then he told his purpose. He says, they will know that I am God.
Yes.
So he obviously knew he was going to attack their gods. He obviously knew that the word God to them meant many gods.
Yeah.
And they're going to know I am God. He stated it right in the beginning of his purpose. And then he said, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. So his purpose was stated in the beginning. And I don't think it was to pick on somebody. I believe it was for his purpose and his will to show the world, obviously all these years later, that I am God Almighty. And he stated it in the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't really answer the question, does God actively, in other words, is Pharaoh out of the picture and God's just going to harden his heart, whether Pharaoh wants it or not? Or does God know Pharaoh, that's his character, and Pharaoh hardens his own heart based on what God is doing? That's the way I think it is.
That's it. And we can go to kindergarten and you say God gives us free will, and I'm willing to accept that as the reason why he would not manipulate Pharaoh to do this.
Yeah, and I think so. I just think God is, God knows people's hearts, and he knows what's going to, he knows what's going to harden and what's going to soften them. Does that make sense? No?
That's the only thing that makes sense.
Okay.
You know, I mean, the impact of this, the sun metaphor is, I think, exactly the right way to think about it. It's
Yeah.
like, depends on the condition of your heart.
Yeah.
And God knew what the condition of his heart was. And I think you nailed this earlier too. And I know the purpose of the plagues is twofold. It's destroy Egypt and get Egypt out of the Israelites,
Yeah.
or at least begin the process of getting Egypt out of the Israelites. Because Rod made a point earlier. Moses knew all these gods. He was raised in Pharaoh's household,
Yeah.
and no doubt left as an idolater, worshiping the Egyptian god. Otherwise, it would have been a very unpleasant upbringing
Yeah.
in Pharaoh's house. And you can imagine that pretty much everybody in the Israelite camp in Goshen felt the same way, because how would they not? They would have known nothing other than that.
Yeah.
And we get an inkling of that when Moses says, I don't want to go, when God calls to him from the burning bush, and he's like, they won't listen to me. And Moses would have known that because
Yeah.
he was in Pharaoh's household and he grew up as an Egyptian too. So it's like they didn't have a common language for the I am. They were going to have to learn that all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. The Israelites were not. They had one more God than the Egyptians had.
That's a good rule.
They had Jehovah. Moses' mother taught him about Jehovah, but it's hard to imagine her having a singular view of Jehovah and totally recognize that these others are false. She had to, all of them had to have a bit of education to go through with God.
John,
Yeah.
I would really believe the same way if it does say harden their hearts, he softened the Israelites' hearts.
Yeah.
So it depends on how their heart was.
Right. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
So the same thing happened to them, except the Israelites did not get all the plagues at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, and God is, He's kind and merciful to Israel. They suffer under the first plague, second plague, third plague. And not the fourth plague. And now they're separated, and that becomes an act of mercy, and they begin to see our God is something. But it's still going to take 6 more plagues and a bunch of more stuff in the wilderness, and they all die in the wilderness except for the young ones who, you think about, they probably weren't grown up they grew up physically in the Egyptian pantheon of gods, but as little, but they grew up more under one Jehovah. And that's why they survived, everyone under 19 who left Egypt survived, more or less. So, yeah, it's...
John, I think the progression of the hardening of Pharaoh's heart is pretty significant. The first 5 plagues, the scriptures say that he hardened his own heart, right? And then in this plague, it's now God is hardening his heart. And I think it goes back to kind of something what you said about it's his nature. He has already shown his nature. He's already been given this opportunity to follow God, and he's already said, no, I'm not going to. And God's finally said, fine, I'm giving you over to what you want.
Yeah.
Just like in Romans 1, where it says God gave them over. He said, they've known about me since the beginning of time. They've seen me. They know everything that's been created. They can see me. And they've chosen not to follow me. So I've given them over to what they want to be given to.
That's good.
And it goes back to that definition that God gives of himself. And he's slow to anger, and he's gracious, and he's compassionate. But he reaches a point where he's finally like, you want this? You don't know what you want, but you're going to get what you want.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's not him giving it to them. It's them getting what they want.
Yeah, it's him. Yeah, them getting what they want. He backs out because he has been holding off. He's been protecting them. So
Yes.
that's a great way to put it. Yeah. So it's and the plague of boils is the first one that affects them personally. And I don't know if you've had. When we went out and had the groundbreaking, did anybody have chiggers? I got them. And I know I got them when I went out the first time and met the guy who's mowing, because I had them before. But man, I got them the day before on Saturday when I met the guy. I wasn't wearing boots then, but man, just those things drive you nuts. For a little bit, for a few days. I can't imagine.
Absorbing Judy.
What?
Absorbing Judy.
Yeah, they didn't have absorbing Judy. They had nothing. It was rough. So that's that plague. The next plague we'll look at next week is the hailstorm, another one that comes from the sky. All right, any last comments on this?
Well, John, I was just going to say, in Hebrews chapter 3, the Hebrew writer goes into this whole notion of your heart hardening.
Yeah.
And that if you allow your heart to harden, and that's what happened with these guys when they were out there for 40 years. It was a continual challenge for those guys, for their heart to be soft enough to accept what God was trying to accomplish there. And I think that's the lesson for us today. We can get really deeply steeped in our own understandings to the point where we become hardened and unreceptive to just being able to communicate with people out there and connect with people. And people don't want to interact with a person that is constantly, well, this is the way it is. This is the way it's got to be.
Yeah.
You have to be open and understanding and nurturing in those conversations that you have. So to me, the biggest lesson for me personally is what am I gonna do to continually allow my heart to be soft and understanding and knowing how to engage with people?
Yeah. And we have to be careful. 1 Corinthians 10, the first few verses, talk about them, the Israelites who came out. They saw these 10 plagues, and then they got out. And then they, well, man, if we could go back to the leeks and the onions, which I just don't do that. But, and it's like, what happened to the plagues in their mind? They forgot them. What can harden our heart is when we don't look at the whole of God. When we pick out one point, man, leeks and onions, that's what it's all about, and we forget everything else. That can harden our heart as well. We don't have to, we don't have to be like the Egyptians and have a whole pantheon of gods, as some people do. We can have ourselves as the God of our lives. And that can harden us our heart as well. And so we got to be careful of that.
I think of it along the analogy about how do you boil a frog. You put it in nice tepid water, and it's nice, it's swimming, and you just turn that heat up a little bit, turn it up a little more, and it doesn't get out. If you threw it into hot boiling water, it's just going to jump out, right? And that's our lives. If we allow ourselves to be in the world, it's like, I'm not going to get into the really bad stuff.
Yep.
I'm just going to do this here. It's not too bad. It's just a little white lie, or it's just a little thing. And then the next day you do a little bit more, and a little bit more. And I think of it along the lines of, when we send our kids off to college even, those first few weeks are so critical to their faith building. And it's what they make a choice in those first few weeks of where they're going to go with their faith.
Yeah.
It's not big things they're doing those first few weeks. It's little choices they make.
Yeah.
It's little choices we make each day. But those little choices, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20 years later, they look back and say, how did I end up where I'm at?
Yeah.
And it all starts with little things, allowing ourselves to walk away from God. And the same thing happens in our walk with God, is little things draw us closer and closer to being like Him.
Yeah.
And so we have to know that our life has to be more and more like Christ in doing what He wants us to do, and less of the world.
Yeah.
And I asked him if it'd be okay to wear shorts tonight. He didn't say anything, and now listen to him.
It looks like a dress.
You didn't say anything. I don't wear shorts.
Sometimes up there big and big. No
No
one would have known that she not have said anything.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Ron's judging you, but I wasn't.
I'm like, you got me.
Perfectly.
Just slowly.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it doesn't matter. It can get us anywhere. The Pharisees, they started, committed to God. We got to be right with God. And by the time Jesus' day, they were so hard-hearted. The Sadducees, same way. So there's not an external guard against it. It has to be internal. We have to be trusting God even when we don't understand it. So,
John, He's equipped us. He's given us everything we need. That doesn't mean we're not going to be tested.
oh yeah,
Okay? And so whenever we're in those circumstances, the hope is that, we make it through that storm, we make it through that challenge. But through that, to your point earlier, don't forget that. Reflect on them.
yeah.
Remember those things. I think it's all about grooming us and molding us and shaping us as we enter those fiery times.
Yeah, we'll, speaking of fire, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they, I don't care what you do. You can throw us in there. God is able to deliver us, even if He won't. We're not going to serve Him. And that's the attitude we need to have.